Here we go. All right, well.
All right, we are ready to start. I am Patty Buckmiller. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Redlands Unified School District in Southern California. I have with me Carla. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Carla Kornblad. I'm from Illinois. And I'm one of the senior consultants and trainers for Key2Ed.
We also have Cassie and Robin, co-owners of Key2Ed, are in the room with us today as well. All right, Carla, do you want to explain what we're doing today?
Sure. So like all of our facilitation meetings, we like to start with the end in mind, and we'd like to propose some outcomes for this session today. So the first one we'd like to propose is that we'd like to create a vision and rationale for using facilitated IEPs in your district or organization. We're going to get to know you in just a sec. And to identify some components of FIEP to implement in 3 to 5 years and also in year 1. Now, some of our activities are going to be a little limited because we have such few participants here, so we'll wing it as we go along. And we would like to help you identify key activities to support facilitation implementation in your organization or the group that you're most familiar with. So that's what we'd like to propose. Is there anything you'd like us to add to what we're going to accomplish today in our hour and a half together? Thing to add? Oh, all right, then we're going to do what we do in all of our meetings. Are we in agreement that this is what we're going to accomplish? I want to see a thumbs up all around the room. Great. Okay, thanks. Now, if we had a little A, we'd be throwing it on our computer there. So this is what we hope to accomplish. This is our proposed agenda for today. After our little welcome, we're going to do a little bit of a brief assessment, a kind of a goofy little assessment, and then we'll do kind of a few background principles about systems change. Because like it or not, when you implement facilitation, it's a change. See, people have been doing their business the way they've been doing their business for whatever reason for a number of years, and we're come to town and say, now you can do it a little bit differently. It is a change, and it is a change for the system as well. So we want to talk a little bit about what system change is, what some of the background principles are, and then we're going to do an activity. We're going to modify that activity about vision. We're going to do an activity about long-range planning, short-term planning, and then what you can do to support your efforts in year 1. All right, is there anything we need to add to this agenda? Anything we need to clarify? All right, so are we in agreement that this is what we're going to do? This is our roadmap for today. I'm looking for everybody's thumbs up. There we go. Okay. All right, so our next thing that we always start our IEP meetings with is how we're going to work together. So as a group today, this is how we're going to work together. We want you to share your views willingly, be open to some new ideas and concepts, participate. We are a small but mighty group, so we're participating. Those of you at home, we're going to give you some homework to do after, for the activities. And we want you to listen and consider, the opinions of others. Okay, this is how we're proposing to work together, even in this small group today. Is there anything we can add or clarify? Hearing none, we're going to get our third agreement. One more. We're going to stretch those. There we go. Thumbs up all the way around. So we are in agreement that this is how we're going to work together. Okay. So before we go too much further, we do need to know who's in the room today. So I'm going to turn this over to Patty for a second.
Okay, so since we have such a small group, why don't we just go around and say where we're from? We'd like to know if you work for a family empowerment center, if you work for a state department, a district. Just so if you could tell us your name and what you do and from what state you're from. We want to see what states we have represented. All right, so would you like to start? Oh, hang on, I gotta run around.
Hi, I'm Kelly Rauscher. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm with Cadre.
Awesome.
I'm a learning and development specialist. Sorry.
Sorry, can you tell us?
Sorry about that. I'm a learning and development specialist.
Thank
you. Hi there, I'm Melanie Reese, and I am the director of Cadre from Eugene, Oregon.
Right. Thank you.
I'm Stephanie Sullivan, and I'm a program coordinator with Klamath County with Central Oregon Disability Support Network.
Right. Oh, I want to be sure. What happened, Jasmine? Jasmine.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Garcia, the Director of Communications and Development for Family Network on Disabilities in Florida.
I'm Renee Avert Sansoni, and I'm with the Parents Place of Maryland, the PTI for Maryland.
Hey there, my name is Joe. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for FND, the Parent Center in Florida.
All right. Yes, we have a lot of parent centers. You guys would like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, are you ready? I'm Cassie.
And I'm Robin. I hope we got that on video.
And we are Kasavan. Okay, there you go. We are educators for 30 years doing many, many different things, but currently we co-own Key2 Ed. Our IEP facilitation training is sort of our flagship training, but what we're after is to improve family and school partnerships. So, yeah. You good? Good.
Thank you. All right, thank you for letting us know who's in the room today.
So we're going to do this little silly activity. So you see these numbers in front of you, okay? And I want you to think about the.
Good.
So I want you to think about the organization that you can most closely affiliate, okay? We do this in school districts or school buildings a lot. So you're in a little bit different circumstances, but think about your organization or your dream organization. And think about if you were implementing a change. We like to think about facilitation as a change. We like to think about it as everybody doing facilitation for all of our meetings, not only those with conflict, but those all every day, how we work at an IEP table. So we want you to think about your staff. And we want you to think about these numbers that are in front of you. And we want you to pull a number if you think your staff are confused about facilitation. Let's say you're going to do that change. And everybody's going to do facilitation. Pull a number 1 if you feel like they're confused. So the little packets are in front of you. So I should see people looking at the numbers, okay? And if you don't have those numbers in front of you, we're going to grab some for you. So I've got a ton of them over here. Okay. So if you feel like your staff are confused, pull a number 1. If you feel like your staff are anxious, pull a number 2. You can pull more than 1. Hold on, we'll get a little summary here in a minute. Okay. If you feel like your staff are resistant to change, pull a number 3. Okay. If you feel like your staff are frustrated, pull a number 4. If you feel like your staff are experiencing kind of false starts and stops, pull a number 5. And if you feel like you don't have any problems at all, don't pull a card at all. Okay, now you can pull more than 1, so take a look at those cards and pull a card that kind of represents where you think your staff are. Do you have a whole set? You don't have 6. You don't need a 6, because if you're a 6, you're good to go. There's 4 and 5 underneath that piece of paper there. 6. You don't need a 6. If you guys are 6s, you should stand up here with Patty and me and do this presentation. Okay. All right. Okay. How many of you pulled a 1? Okay. So how many of you pulled a 2? 2. Many of you pulled a 3. Okay, yeah. How many of you pulled a 4? Okay. How many of you pulled a 5? Okay, so you've had more than 1. You could hold them all up. Joe, you could hold up almost all of them, right? No, just 2 of them? Okay, good. Okay, good. Well, let's talk about the answer key now. This is from Neuster's work, and he says, there we go. That if you have staff who are confused, they have a lack of vision, like where are you going? I can say this, that when we finish a 2-day training, which is our standard training, and people at the end, they say, well, are we supposed to do this? I wonder what happened to the vision for the district. I think there's something missing there. And if people can't tell me what's the difference between a facilitated IEP and a regular IEP, I figure that something's been missing in the vision. So if your people are confused, they probably don't know why what it is all about. Okay? If your people are anxious, they probably have a lack of skills, that they don't know exactly how to do this, that they may feel inadequate or unsure about themselves in terms of a lack of skills. If they're resistant, and we do see a lot of this, they're resistant, it's because they don't know why. There's not a lot of incentives for changing. So if you're a psychologist and you're perfectly comfortable with starting it and, going around the table and reading your report from top to bottom and not having a lot of interaction with the people around the table, if you're perfectly comfortable with that, there's not a lot of incentive to change your pattern of behavior. You may have thought that this is compliant behavior. You may have thought that your professional organization has told you you should do this, and the incentive to change is very vague. So if there's resistance, and we do see there's resistance to change, if we do see resistance to change, it's generally because of a lack of incentive or a perceived incentive. If they're frustrated, anybody have a 4? People are frustrated? And sometimes it's because there's a lack of resources. And the one that we see, in fact, I was just at a session just now, the one before it, funds came up a lot. And for us, it's time and substitutes. If you're working in school districts and you're asking people to find time, that resource is extremely valuable. You're asking people to find time to plan and think. That is a very valuable resource and is very scarce these days. And to be realistic about it, it's pretty scarce. If you have people experiencing false starts, and nobody pulled a 5 in here, but we do see that there are people who don't know what the plan is. They don't know that if they're trying to do a series of trainings, they don't know where they are in the sequence of them, and they will experience a lot of frustration and failure. Now, when you think about change, if you are successfully, this is Costner's model, and if you're successfully implementing change, you probably have all of those features in place, but that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a terrific amount of time and some good amount of effort from the leadership. So what we're proposing is that facilitation is really a systems change. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, and when there are considerations when you're considering any kind of change. Now, people in schools, they adapt a whole bunch of things. There's a new curriculum, a new IEP, electronic IEP system, PBIS, MTSS, all of those things are all systems change. And in order to do that, when you're embracing a change, there are things that you want to think about. How adaptable are your staff? How disruptive can this be to their everyday task? So let's say we're going to ask people to start doing all their IEP meetings in a facilitated way. Well, it's going to disrupt people from doing their traditional IEP meetings. They're traditional, I like to call them IEP, those traditional IEPs. It is disruptive. So you have to think about trying to minimize the disruptions as much as possible, trying to figure out how you can get employees to be engaged. I think our experience is when people move to this system, it has to be a top-down and a bottom-up change at the same time. We've experienced those that are school districts that say that the administration says we're going to do this, and it's less successful than we're going to do this together. We've also experienced times when we're just training teachers and they go, well, I have no idea how this is supposed to work. So it really has to be a system that works together and minimizes the amount of risk they think they're taking. Now, special education, I don't need to tell you, over time has become a very risk-aversive group. And as a consequence, we've buried ourselves in the paperwork. So we're going to read that paperwork to them, and we're never going to really ask a question or seek participation. We're never going to veer from that script because we're afraid of taking a risk. We don't know if we ask a parent a question for participation. If they ask us a question, we're not sure that we're going to be giving you the district response or the safe response. So we want to be able to assure people that what they're doing is okay. We have to say, almost all the time we do our presentations, we have to say, this is legal. The first presentation I went to from the facilitation group had a lawyer along with them. And they would present something, and then the lawyer would say, this is legal. And then they'd say something else, like, this is legal. I mean, it was something that was really important. We really want to make sure our staff understand that it minimizes the risk as well. We want to be able to systematically move change without disrupting the continuity of our programming and services. It's a lot to consider. At the same time, we want to drive some innovation and then really achieve the objectives that we want. And obviously, all of that going together is a little overwhelming for people who are trying to plan for change. So Cassie and Robin and I talked for a long time about, well, what is it like when people are trying to move this system? And we can point to certain districts had a plan. And they communicated that plan, and they figured out how to make it less person leadership, but they figured out they had a plan. And they were able to translate that to the staff, and those were the districts that were successful. As a consequence, we went out and piloted what you're going to see today, the highlights of what you're going to see today, with those districts who were successful implementers, and we'll share that with you as we go through. One of those districts is Patty's district. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty.
Okay, so before I took the role that I took right now, I was the Executive Director of Special Services, and I was appointed to that position to affect change in the department. I don't have a special ed background, and I had to think about it for a few days before I told my superintendent yes, but he really wanted me to affect change in the department. So I just felt empowered with given that charge. And then one of the things that was really a problem for our district was our IEPs. We did not have good relationships with our parents. IEPs were taking hours and hours, and the role of the principal or the administrator in that IEP was unclear and had kind of developed through the years and maybe some not good systems. So our new superintendent came to me and said that I had a year to change it. So I had a fire under me to try to figure it out. And what made the most sense for me was really looking at a facilitated IEP. And the data is going to speak for itself too, in terms of relationships with our parents. So I had a charge. I involved the principals in the decision. So it wasn't like me just saying from the top down, this is what we're going to do. We talked about different ways that we could change the way that IEPs are. Of course, the principals wanted just to come in and rubber stamp it and not have to be part of the meeting. But that wasn't going to be the case of what was going to happen. So you want to go ahead and go to the next slide? So I just want to share with you some of the data. So on the on the left-hand side, that shows we're part of a SELPA. And so not all states have a SELPA. A SELPA is a special education local plan area. And what that stands for, that acronym, because we love acronyms, we pool our money together, we pool our resources together, and it's really good guidance, and you just can learn a lot from each other as well. So in our SELPA, those are the districts that are in our SELPA. There's 5 districts in our SELPA, and the pieces of the pie show how many students or what percentage of the SELPA come from that district. So Redlands, Rialto, and Colton, we were kind of a third of the pie pretty much. We go back and forth just a little bit. Redlands, at this time in August of 2024, had 3,305 students that had an IEP. We now have almost 4,000 students, so we're close to about 18% of our population. We're a district of about 20,000 students. So like I said, it's been neck and neck, but you can see in 2024, we were 31% of the students in our SELPA were from Redlands. Over on the right-hand side shows our due process cases, because we also pool our resources for our attorneys, and we all share in the cost of any sort of due process. So we're all motivated to help each other reduce that, because it's right for students, of course, but we all pay for a portion of all of this. And so you can see that Redlands, my friends were not really happy with us because we were 50% of the due process cases. We had 16 cases in the 2024 school year. Now that was down because when I took over the department and during COVID, we had something like 35 cases. It was really, really crazy. So it already had dropped significantly, but to still be half of the SELPA's cases was not something that I was at all proud of. Okay, then fast forward to, that was our initial FIEP when we just started sending, our SELPA brought out Key to Ed, and I was just sending a school at a time because honestly, I couldn't really afford to contract with anybody. I needed to figure this out on my own, but sending people to the SELPA, just a school at a time. So at that point of initial implementation of 24 schools, I was able to send 3 schools to that first initial implementation. Okay, fast forward to last April 2025, we got a new superintendent. He said, this is way too slow. You need to figure this out at the end of the 24-25 school year. So our data, we still had our 3,305 kids. So we're still the same piece of the pie in terms of enrollment. But you can see that we really dropped our due process cases. We had 3. Very excited about that. And then you can see, thank you. And there was just a whole mindset shift. So yes, we were all trained in facilitated IEPs. The role of the principal changed significantly, but the parents felt heard and they felt listened to. And we actually had a parent cry tears of happiness at an IEP because for the first time, she did not go into an IEP hearing all the things her son cannot do. It was all starting with his strengths and what is he able to do. And then it was his challenges and those led to the goals. And so it just was super awesome. So I feel like the parents are happy and we're all happy. It's just been really, really awesome. All right, what's our next one on there? Okay, let's talk about cost for a little bit. So this was in 22-23. That is what Redland's share of the parent attorney fees were. Okay, remember, we're in a SELPA, so we all pay a proportionate share. So my other districts in the SELPA, the 4 other districts, all had to pay part of that Redlands cost as well. So we all work together. It's collaborative because if one district has 15 cases, we all have a share of that. So it's not just like paying for your own cases. 22-23, that was the amount, $126,900 that we had to pay for the parent attorney fees. That's not the only cost. That's not showing our district legal fees. We share in that cost too, or comp ed or anything that we had in the settlement. That's just what we have to pay because California has to pay for the parent attorney fees. I didn't realize it was not that way in all the states, but that's what I'm used to. Okay, then it dropped significantly, 23. Well, not significantly. It dropped some, 23-24. It did drop significantly in the 24-25 school year for our portion. Yes. Sure. Let me run down there. Yeah.
So at the SELPA level, they pay for the the parent attorney regardless of win or lose? I'll be darned.
Yeah, it's very different. So regardless of win or lose, we have to pay for the parent attorney fees. It's California. Yeah. It's California. Yes. Yeah. Other questions about any of the data that I've shared with you? And it is, like I said, it's proportionate. So that's why can you go back one slide if you're able to? Sure. That's why the pieces of the pie over here on that side are important because you're paying a proportionate of all the cases for the SELPA. You're paying the proportionate and it's that percentage. So Redlands is going to pay 31% of the whole entire fee, even though our piece of the pie went so small, but it did actually reduce our numbers. Yes.
So how long has California been paying for parents' legal fees? Because I feel like if we implemented that right now in the state where I'm from, we might actually have a massive increase in due process because the reality is parents don't have access to legal support.
Yeah. So it's kind of no harm, no foul. I mean, so I don't know. That's an excellent question. I do not know because I've spent my entire career in California. It's always been that way as long as I've known. So I don't know. We'll find out for you though. Other questions while I'm out here? Okay. Oh, yeah. We are doing Walktober, so. Okay. I think.
Okay. So our goal is to put all of you dispute resolution people out of business. That's our goal. That would be great, wouldn't it? It would be great. But when we do training with districts, we say that that is a wonderful, fabulous outcome. And I always say, boy, you could buy, if it costs $50,000, $50 to $75,000 per due process, you can buy a lot of teaching assistants with that, you know? So I just think it's a good thing. It's a wonderful outcome. I do want to praise Patty and her team, though, that she's also really paid attention to her programming. But beyond that, what we want to encourage people to remember that this is to just have good meetings, productive, meaningful participation with families, efficient meetings, ones where teams act like teams. All of that is really our goal, to have meaningful meetings. And so that is a wonderful outcome. We don't come to town and say we want to just reduce all your disputes. We want to do a lot of things that will probably prevent those kind of problems from happening. But we did look at the systems, all the systems changed. Let's say PBIS or, PBIS or MTSS, there always is some similar things that are in place. So for example, a collaborative leadership structure. So you have all the roles, some psychologists, some teachers, some administrators, all kind of working together to see how the system will change, an ongoing structure. So my story is, go ahead and Google me. I mean, I have a checkered past, but one of my experiences is that I used to work for a research group. And my job always was systems change. So we'd write these grants with all these big ideas, and then they turn it over to Carla and say, make it work. So that was always my area of interest, is systems change. And I have to apologize for the last system I was in. We started doing facilitation system-wide, trained everybody, and then I left the position and a lot of it fell away because there wasn't a consistent plan. One thing we know about COVID is that it disrupted education in a giant way. Even if people were doing facilitation, let's say 5 years ago, they forgot. And they would go back to what they were more familiar with. They have to be refreshed. So we know that there needs to be an ongoing structure, that when staff rotate, leadership rotates, that there is something permanent, and you wouldn't experience what I experienced in my last job. We also want to have a structure that's flexible and responsive to the changing needs, the cultural changes, different kinds of things that happen in your districts. Oops. And then we want to have systems that have data to inform our decision. A lot of times we institute a change and we don't know whether or not it's effective. And what we talked about this morning at lunch was, bias. Because we put the change in place, therefore it's working. We need to have some data. And we want to be able to use professional development judiciously. And that includes continuous support for staff who are trying something new. So you can't just train them. We know this about professional development. You can't just train them and say, go back and multiply. It doesn't work. They need support. And we have learned this from MTSS and PBIS, that you need to have structures, district structures, team structures. You need to have structure. You need to have support for administration to be able to move a system forward. So as a consequence, we kind of created this little plan that includes the activities along these 7 activities: vision, goal setting, communication, professional development, resources, your informal support plan, that's informal, how you're informally supporting your teams, and then data collection and review. So we have these activities, and our Redlands team participated in, and I thought they were going to do it as a district. But they did it, and they have 26 buildings. So each building came up with their implementation plan. They were all very similar in a lot of ways, but they were also very culturally focused on their particular culture. So they could take these activities and bring them back to their buildings. And then overall, Patty's department could oversee all of these different things that were working in their district. So it can be organized by a district or by a building. So we've done it lots of different ways. The the easiest way to do it is to say, well, we're going to do a little quick training, a 2-day training, let's say, on facilitation. And then a third day would be, here's how you're going to, isn't this a great idea? Now let's talk about how you're going to implement it. That's been a nice way we've been doing that. But we also have been working with some districts who have been implementing for a while, and they want to get reframed. They want to recharge their plan and put it back together again. And again, I always point to COVID. COVID was disruptive. So then we've been working with some districts who have then kind of realigned their plan after a period of time. So we've done it a couple of different ways. We've mostly done it for districts and school buildings. We could design it for individual teams, but I think that's a little intense for individual teams. Although many times the building and individual teams are one and the same. So we can organize it that way. And this is our first activity. So we want to start with vision. This is a great AI activity. And here's our, I mean, we were like, oh, we had a big discussion about this at dinner last night, but I will say that, okay, so the first thing we want to do is you have a sheet of paper in front of you, and those of you at home, you have the handouts. We're not going to do this here because we're such a small little group, but we want you to think about, what is your vision? Now, what's interesting about it is that what makes this facilitated IEPs different from your traditional IEPs. And that is a hard concept for people. And I always want to say, when I'm going to a party, they'll say, what are you doing? And I'll tell them that I train for this stuff. And I have to, in like 2 sentences, say what I'm doing in a quick way. It's the elevator speech. So we're asking people to come up with a vision for what they want to have happen. Now, we have learned a couple of things. We used to, and Patty is a good example, we just would give them big sheets of paper and say, go have at it, okay? And they would conceptually just write out, talk and scratch things up, different colored markers. It was all great. It took forever. It took them a long time. Then we said, well, let's look at the introductory information about facilitation. What is it about facilitation? And we'd give them some keys. So here are some key concepts. Guiding IEP groups, building understanding and agreement, all group members, useful results, effective communication, respect and understanding, full participation. These are all of our buzzwords. Informed discussion, reconciling differences, needs of the student, efficient, guided, effective communication. All these are our buzzwords. So we started giving them the buzzwords, and then the younger people in the group started tacking them into ChatGPT. And I have these workshops all timed. I'm thinking it's going to take 45 minutes, and 5 minutes later they're reading off their vision statements, and they're beautiful. They're really beautiful. So again, what we'd like you to do is kind of think about these words. Wow, they're loud next door. Now, we'd like you to think about these words, and if we were doing an activity, we'd ask you to kind of put this into a vision statement. And a vision statement usually has 1 or 2 statements that says why this is different and where you want to go. Okay? So that's that, since we're such a small group.
Yes.
Yes.
Just want to say, though, that although that is beautiful, and Rich and Joe and Robin and I talked about this morning, that if you use ChatGPT with those phrases and they spit out a vision statement in 5 minutes, that's beautiful, but that's the first draft.
That's the first step.
That's the first draft. And then it's a matter of now coming together as your school team, district team, whatever, and going, okay, now owning that, revising it, really putting the human factor behind it. So I just wanted to add that because I love the idea of doing that in ChatGPT, but that's not your final vision statement that then you throw up and go, here it is, because there's no ownership to it.
Right. And so let's show you some of those vision statements that people did refine. That was it was a shockaroonie to me when I was like, wait, okay, done. Let's move on.
Yeah.
It's really,
But they did have to
shocking.
take it back to their school sites because we only trained, like for our example, and in other trainings also, like we sent a team to the training and they had to take it back and share that with their school site. There also was a lot of discussion between, is this our school vision or is this like our vision for an IEP meeting? So we had some discussion about that. Carta and I also talked about that productive struggle of a team working through it. It's really important. Like our preschool team, they did spend probably, they didn't finish in the 45 minutes that Carla had given them.
They did.
But they had such a rich discussion about what it was going to look like. And they came back and they worked on it the next few days and sent emails back and forth. But that productive struggle is really important. And that created the buy-in that Cassie was talking about.
And that preschool team, just as an aside, is so committed to this process that the supervisor for those programs popped in at a 2-day training we were doing, and he's just said, we've done 150 initial IEPs using facilitation, and we are never going back to the old way. I mean, they are just so, and so they're entering all the kids with this grace to come through the system. And we know it's complicated, but let's bring you in and be the helping system that we are. I mean, it's very, very powerful. So here's a couple of examples of vision statements. This is one of the districts that was in the midpoint, and they redid their vision after having done it before. Will empower IEP teams to meet student individual needs using the facilitated IEP process to foster shared responsibility and effective partnerships through collaborative decision-making, open communication, meaningful participation of students, families, and staff members. That is beautiful. And then they have to say, why is this different from what you think your traditional meetings are doing? Because a lot of people think that's what we do in our IEP meetings, but we can really be better. Here's another one. Our vision is to establish an IEP process that utilizes facilitative techniques and collaborative strategies, fostering mutual respect, shared responsibility, and clear communication between families and educators as equal partners. Our goal is to develop well-supported, actionable plans that enhance students' educational experience and drive their overall success in Warwick Public Schools. And here's one from Redlands.
Okay, from Redlands, Kimberly Elementary is one of our elementary schools that went through the process. So Kimberly Elementary's vision is to create a shared responsibility through fostering a collaborative environment focused on supporting all students' individual needs by using effective communication to build relationships that increases success of student progress. There's a lot of words. They did not use AI for theirs. They went with their productive struggle.
Probably would have helped.
And it's aside to, Carla, I mentioned earlier that we didn't do this as, well, our preschool team is a district team, but we really did want to empower each school to do their own vision and not have it be just something I was handing it to them, because that wouldn't really have that buy-in piece of it. And I didn't want it to be top down, even though we are going to do facilitated IEPs was a top-down decision. How it was going to look for each school needed to be individualized to them.
I think it's important to note that when we say facilitated process, it depends on your experience, your background, your knowledge of that. A facilitated process is those things. It doesn't have to be a certain facilitated process. The general term of that, because as we know, facilitation has taken on its own life over the years, right? And so what does that actually mean? And so actually defining that for people, what a facilitated IEP meeting is versus the standard are those key phrases that you listed up there for that, whatever that process looks like, but we're going to have collaboration. We're going to focus on the students' needs. We're going to have, everybody has a voice, everybody has a role. Those are the facilitation tools and techniques that, we can take from anywhere and then apply it. But this is all about the systems change, which is completely a whole nother level. Yeah.
Any other thoughts about vision? I know that it's a hard thing to begin with vision, but if you don't know where you're going, that's why it's called a vision. Any other thoughts, Patty?
Yeah.
Good, we're good. All right, so if you have a vision, then the next thing is to develop a goal. So what are you going to accomplish? And so we suggest that once you have a vision, you have a long-range goal. Now, we know that this takes a while depending on the size of your district, although you're a large district and your superintendent said, let's crank it up. We're going to get it done in a year. We also know that there are other districts who do that. They say, we're going to devote a lot of time and energy. We're going to get this rolling in a year. But most districts take a little bit longer. They take 3 to 5 years. And we know that that's just from the literature, and systems change just takes a while to get everybody on board. And then even then, you might not have everybody on board, but you're going to be around 80%. So that's where we want to try to go. So of course, we know that change takes time. It can vary greatly, and it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on how many resources you can devote. And some of that now is time. That is a thing. So it depends on the time available. So speaking of that, where's our gift of time? What happened to that slide?
It's okay.
I'm going to go
Coming up
back.
for the goals.
Where's our gift of time?
It's coming up. We're not there yet.
Is it coming up?
I think
Oh my goodness. Okay, so now I'm making you scroll around here.
While she's doing that, I did want to add that, and I know doing like all the training in 1 year is ambitious, but we really do have a 3 to 5 year plan because it's not a one and done. This needs to continue. The other thing too that helped our timing was that we switched over to a whole new IEP platform. So we went from a system, it was called Web IEP, and it dwindled down to only a few SELPAs were using it, to SACE, which is used widely in California. And so teachers and teams are already having to rethink how they were doing IEPs. It already looked different. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch, like it's going to look, what you do on the actual IEP is going to look different, and how you're actually conducting the IEP is also going to look different. And I had a lot of fear that it was too much at one time, but it really was a blessing that we were changing the IEP system, because the whole thing was just a mindset shift completely. So just like we're like leaving the old behind, and this is what we're doing. So that helped. In the long run, that really did help.
So this is the format that we've suggested people use. Doesn't this look familiar? Given something, somebody's going to do something within some period of time to some criterion. Does it look like an IEP goal? Sure it should. We should be fairly good at this, frankly. And so why couldn't we write a goal like this? So given support and professional development, the district or the organization will implement some aspects of facilitation successfully. Now, successfully is a relative term, and the some aspects is another term by the end of, let's say, the 27-28 school year. Now, what is that criterion? That's to some criterion. That's the kicker. So in your packets and in your handouts, there is something called an implementation checklist. So if you've got, there's handouts at the end of your table there. So there's something called an implementation checklist. So see that implementation checklist? This is an abbreviated one. Ours is a little bit longer. And we have our staff take a look at those elements, both what do you do before a meeting, what do you do during a facilitated meeting, and what do you do after a facilitated meeting, okay? And we have people take a look at this and do a little bit of a self-assessment. It's actually a self-assessment tool that you can use continuously. But for goal setting, which is the step we're on right now, we have people then look at your team. Oh, sorry. We have people look at your team. Thank you. Look at your team. Where are you now? Rate yourself 1, 2, or 3. And those items where you want to set some priorities for how you're going to implement it in the next 3 to 5 years. That goes into that criterion line on the goal. So you can see X number of aspects of the IEP successfully. So we have a criteria line. Now, some districts will use a percentage of. So they want to do 80% of those items on there, or they will do a number of them. They'll set the priorities. So they'll set the priorities, let's say, use an agenda, use outcomes, use norms, send reports home ahead of time. They'll set those priorities, and they'll numerically say, we're going to do these items consistently in 3 to 5 years. So then people will sit here and they will determine what their goals should be. And based on this information, so that they have a framework to be able to move that forward. Okay. So here's a goal that Redlands made. I'm going to let
Yeah,
you.
I will read this one. And so given support from our SELPA and Special Services Department, all Redlands schools will implement 80% of the FIEP components and will conduct all IEP meetings using this format by the end of the 25-26 school year. So that was our long-term goal. Are we there? No, not exactly. We just recently brought Carla out to talk with our principals because sometimes it's really nice to have somebody, they've heard from me a lot, but somebody else saying, oh, you need to be doing them this way. So she was very good at coming out and talking to them. And then we also have a whole lot of new administrators, and 50% of our administrators are in their first 2 to 3 years. So that is also another wrinkle into the whole thing. I hadn't thought of a plan for training new administrators because that's a really important person on the team. So that's our goal.
But you can see that they have chosen this. I'm going to go back to so they've chosen which groups, which types of meetings, and what criteria they're going to get to in 3 to 5 years. Okay. So, yeah.
So in the state that I'm from, we've seen massive turnover in special ed directors. And in under 5 years, we've had almost 80% turnover in our state. And so my question is, if it's a 3 to 5 year plan, and in 5 years, we've seen almost 80% turnover in special ed directors, what do we do when key leadership that is driving this changes? Like, what do we do to sustain?
It's an excellent question. So for me personally, because I am not in that role anymore, so I have to train my successor in that. But I think the key for Redlands, I should speak for that, has been cabinet, the superintendent and the cabinet being involved. Now that I'm a cabinet member, I can see from a higher level, like the importance of all of that. But it's also not just the director's responsibility. I think it does need to be a whole shared responsibility. But the 4 years I was as a director, I was probably one of the longest standing directors in Southern California. So it is really sad. It's usually a 2-year turnover for the most part. So I think it just has to be sustained, but it's a district initiative. It's a district system change. It's not just on the special ed department.
So what I'm hearing is the importance of getting all the way up to superintendent cabinet support behind this, so that when there is inevitable turnover, there will be the push to continue this forward.
Yes.
If it's written, I don't know. Some document. If it's written, it will be somewhere. And there would be enough people with enough knowledge to be able to say, we have a plan. This is what happened to me because it was personality-driven leadership when I was there. I left and it dropped. The next executive director who came in was from a different state, never did this, didn't have that as their priority. Now, I know that there were some on my leadership team that would have pushed it forward had it been documented and had been communicated that this was the plan. And so this is, my learning experience that in order for us to be consistent and sustainable, we do need to write some things down. And then one of the other items is the communication plan. That this can't be only held by a certain number of people or owned by, that's why we talked about you have to have broad swaths of people driving this initiative so that somebody who's still there will be able to pull this document up and say, no, this is what we decided we're doing. And that includes unions and school boards. That they are knowledgeable about where this happens. I mean, the unions are a giant communication feast because they cannot be thinking that this is something added to the stressors that our special education teachers already have. Yeah.
I was also thinking about the ownership piece that you spoke to before, and your intentional decision to have it be at the school level. And it does raise some questions as far as like, how do you frame things like what sort of boundaries you give them with their individual implementation plans? But I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Okay, so we did give them freedom with their individual plans, but it all was within the same framework. So their freedoms were really coming up with their goals, their long-range goals, their short-term goals, their plans, like how they're going to get there, their vision. That was like where the freedoms were. So not so much in that, like the hardest thing really for us, and it did involve our union. We invited our union to be trained right alongside with us, was in getting the SLPs and the school psychologists to give the reports early instead of presenting it to the parent at the table. So we've asked for it to be 10 days early. That has been negotiated with our union. So they wanted 5 days and I stuck to the 10 days because I know it's going to happen somewhere. We don't have the same laws that some other states have that they have to have it ahead of time, but to spring that on a parent in a meeting, we know that's really huge. And I also do want to add that even though our administrators are all fairly new and the turnover in directors for special ed, that is a real thing. Our SLPs and our school psychologists, they have been there we have people, a lot of school psychologists and SLPs who have been there 30 plus years. So it's getting those people on board and those are the ones having the ownership of it, because that's what's going to carry us into the future.
Sure. I would probably add that these conversations are guided conversations. So in our experience so far, we have people who are working in this implementation, these activities. So we do them on Zoom, and we can also, this is better in person, because you can listen to their conversations and kind of redirect them or ask them questions. So these are guided, they are free within a framework, but the conversations are guided.
And something else, yeah, to add is that when you look at the abbreviated, the implementation checklist too, from one site to another, what they need for setup, what they need during the meeting and what they want to do after meeting and what they implement first would be completely different from site to site based on the culture of the school, based on the families and so on. So when we look at, a percentage to what criteria, I mean, you could start small and for some school, they'd be like, okay, we're already doing these. Now we're going to do all of this. It's going to be 80% or 90% of this. And for another school, it might be like, we're going to introduce one setup, one thing, the first year, and we're going to make it very slow systems change. So that freedom is there as well.
I did give them a generic district version, like with the district logo on it, and I gave them all editable rights to it. And so we do have a shared Google Drive where all the schools put their items so they can like beg and borrow from each other for that as well. And I'd say maybe 2 of the 26 schools are using just our generic district one, but they were really excited to put their logos on it and to put their mascot's name in there. And so they really did personalize them.
Yeah. So once you come up with a long-term goal, just like an objective, here's another one. Given support and professional development, the school district 23 will fully implement 75% of the aspects of the checklist. And they've done them before, during, and after. They've separated them out. They have this wild spreadsheet that they keep track of it in special education, all special education meetings by June 2028. So the format allows them to be flexible, but it still gives them some structure about what kind of components in facilitation we'd like to see happening in their own buildings. All right. So once you come up with that, a long-term goal, and we would be normally doing this with you guys, making you do this, but let's pretend we wouldn't have had time. Oh, we're doing okay. All right. Okay. Then the next thing is to figure out what you want to do the first year. And it's just like benchmarking, you back it out. So if that's where you're going to be in 5 years, you're going to back it out. So we're going to do 40% if you're going to look at that criteria column, or only initial IEPs, or only annual reviews, or only early childhood and elementary. So people will then back it out and choose where they want to go year 1 or objective 1. So it's the same formula. We just ask them to now back it up. What do you want to have accomplished? What's interesting in this conversation, though, is there are some people who are really okay with going to the end goal and backward chaining, they're okay with that. They can do that. But there are some people who are forward chainers. So they cannot, we open this up and say, do a 5-year goal. And they're like, here's what we want to do. Year 1, year 2, year 3. So it allows them to go in either direction, but it is interesting. You feel like it, just pick what you want to do at the end. But we went to a session yesterday and some of us are end goalers and some of us are people who like to take steps forward. Okay. Oh, I keep thinking that's a question. Okay. All right. So everybody clear on how this works? Okay. So then here's the year 1 goal for Redlands.
Okay, year 1 goal was given support from our SELPA and Special Services Department. All Redlands teams will attend an FIEP training and begin to conduct IEP meetings using this format by the end of the 24-25 school year. And we asked them to start with initials. And then we called a triennial review, a 3-year review. So that was the next piece we added in. But some schools found it easier to do the annual review, to do it this process for that. And it really came down to that those annual reviews don't have the big reports from the SLP and from the school psychologists. So it really depended on how much support you had from those teams if the school felt more comfortable doing an annual review. But the initial reviews are super important because we want this to be the way that parents know that this is how IEPs are held in Redlands.
Okay. All right. So then there's just final parts that you have to think about. So you have to think about how are you going to support year 1? Because there's a lot of things that go into year 1, and those include what is your communication plan. We work with a district in Irvine, California, and they have been doing this for many years. And there's a large district in Illinois that piloted this with us as well. And they actually said that the most important activity is the communication plan. That, yeah, you need a vision and you need some goals and you need to know what you're trying to accomplish. But if you don't communicate that with people, again, I've been at trainings where people say, where are other people supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing this? And what it reflects to me is somebody hasn't communicated. That shouldn't be my job coming in as an outside trainer to say, yeah, I usually say, well, I think so. You're here and I think so. But nobody has communicated to them that somebody should be doing this, or this is what the district is embracing. And so the communication plan is a big effort. And that includes board members, union members, newsletters, websites, all kinds of different features that you want to not only in-person communication, but all kinds of different kinds of communication. You want to bring your parent groups into this. So that they're aware of what's going on, that they are participating in it. And if you have a district group that could be helping you design how it should go, that they would be a part of that as well. We always suggest that our teams go out and try this with our families who would be willing to give us a lot of feedback on how it's working, and then embrace those parents as kind of our steering committee to help us move it forward. We also know that for year 1 to make it successful, you need to have a professional development plan, and that is formal training. We like to think about it as formal training. And then the other one, second to the bottom, the informal support plan is like, how can people support each other? So there are districts who are, including your district, who are doing things like the team is going back and they're making little videos, or they're going to a staff meeting and they're doing a little quick demonstration, or they have name cards and they're saying, everybody, we're doing these name cards, and they talk about them at staff meetings. So they're doing informal supports for each other, and they're finding time to talk to each other about how they're doing on those components. What problems are we having? What things can we improve? Many districts have the support of shared drives. So people come up with a good idea, they throw it into this shared drive. There are a series of resources that they can help each other. But it can't be just, our experience is coming in and training, but it can't be just that. because it will, that we know from all systems change, the system will fail because it's not supported. So people come up with all kinds of different things, and I'm going to share that with you in just a second. Figuring out the resources, and again, time to plan and think about it, that's a big one. And then figuring out what kind of data you would like to see to whether or not your system is being effective. Now, it can be something as informal as Santa Rosa, California, if they have a traditional meeting, they time it. They start a stopwatch and end a stopwatch. And if they have a facilitated meeting, they time it. And then they can compare, are we more efficient at our facilitated meetings versus our traditional meetings? There are people who do parent surveys. There are people who do how many reports do we get out ahead of time. There's a variety of different things that people are doing to be able to know whether or not they're being successful. Of course, you can look at complaints and due processes, but those are big ticket items. The ones that are more meaningful for a team are whether or not we're spending, our parents are happy, we're leaving happy, our staff are happy, and whether or not our meetings are faster or more efficient. That's what they really like. And I'm going to see if So there's some examples of communication: the boards, unions, administration, finding time to meet and review progress, collecting data on the number of meetings you're having, the time for those meetings, the number of complaints, those kinds of things. And in terms of overall new staff, we have a lot of new staff coming in too. And one of the districts in this District 23 we're talking about, one of the things on their action plan is every new staff member will observe a facilitated meeting as part of their new staff orientation. So they get the orientation right away. This is how we do IEP meetings, and we're going to get you some support and training, but this is how we do it. Get ready. This is how we do it. It's just a great part of their action plan. But you have to be cognizant of there's new staff coming in all the time, and you have to do something to make sure that they're coming in and being supported as well. So part of the internal support plan.
Before you go off that one, I just want to talk a little bit about the school boards. It's really important to have communication with them all the steps of the way. They're super happy because when a parent complains, they usually, they CC the superintendent and the school board on everything. So they've been hearing for a number of years how unhappy parents have been with our IEP process and just parents not feeling heard. So the board is 100% on board with what we're doing. And our unions, having our union members both classified and certificated in the training and learning about it was super critical as well.
Any thoughts about internal support? Now, obviously, in an hour and a half, we're just giving you the thoughts to think of. And I've been sitting in on the sessions here thinking, oh, that's a good idea. But if I were to take that and try to figure out how to put those great ideas back with the staff, it's a little overwhelming. So we just want you to think about how you can kind of put this together. And I don't know where our picture of the gift of time is. Because it's a gift of time. That you have time to meet together. What happened to it? I'm upset about it too much. So here are some of the things that Redlands has done to be able to support them.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this kind of along the way, but we've also made a commitment to provide coaching for each site. And then it's been really important. The first coaching sessions I sat in on as the director, as SPED at the time. But I think it's really important that I'm not part of that because you don't want your boss looking over your shoulder. So I feel like they've been much more open and honest with the coach when they have that. But it also has built in an accountability piece. Like our preschool team, when they first started out, I don't know why they embraced it, but they dragged their heels on doing their first one. And so that calendar date that we had that they were going to have a coaching session, it really got them to move, saying we have to conduct a few before we have our coaching session. So I feel like it just is a marker in time. But now I think that they've been much more open with the facilitators that are coaching them because they're, and sometimes the principal joins. I'd like the principal to join, but they don't always have to because the coaching could be for the team as well. Special attention for our school psychologists and SLPs. They really are the people that I'm counting on keeping this going and having it just be a way of life. And related service providers, our OTs and Our ERMS counselors, all of those people are a big, important piece of.
Terms is mental health.
Yeah, mental health. It's not called that everywhere. It's educationally related mental health. It might be different than counseling services that a student receives outside of the school day, and it's part of their IEP. And then parent training. So we have a CPAC. It's a Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, similar to a DLAC, which is like a English Learners Advisory Committee. And so the CPAC has been super important. And then we also had our parents that formed together, and they have formed one of the first in Southern California of a special education PTA. And so it's a special PTA for special education parents, and getting that group involved and on board has been super important. Parent training, Carla just did one of our first parent trainings with them. So I have shown them a lot about it, but having somebody come out, a consultant come out and show them and talk to the parents, they felt like really important and special about that as well.
So just a couple of comments about where they are with this is that school psychologists have kind of run the show for some time. And now we're asking them to kind of just cut to the chase, give us the highlights. And that's a hard thing for them. And so they do, I just appreciate the fact that Patty has given our SLPs and our psychologists a little bit of extra love. And many of the districts who are implementing this do spend a little extra time in the psychology teams and the SLP teams to work this through, because it's a little bit, well, it's hard. It's a hard change for them. And so if you've had resistance, that is a hard change for them.
Yeah, one piece, I don't even know if you know this, Carla, but one thing we did do at one of our school psychologist meetings using ChatGPT, and there's another one, I think it's called Sophia, that is actually just for school psychologists. But if you have the app on your phone, there's like a little set of headphones. You can push that and you can have a conversation with Chat. And so at one of our school psychologist meetings, we actually had them practice in pairs of making that phone call to the parent, explaining the report, because they felt like that was kind of, at the IEP meeting, that's their time to shine.
It is their time.
We like the sage on the stage, like it's to explain all the tests. And yeah, so we didn't want them to feel like we're taking that away, but it was going to happen in a phone call before the meeting. And so we actually had to practice that phone call. And we did it at one of our psych meetings that they got to actually practice. They still like text me and write me things about that, like practicing with that. Chat. It was amazing. So, and it was something I didn't even know that you could do on ChatGPT. And they actually, you could even say, like, I even like had them say, like, make the parent more angry, or make the parent upset, or make it a kind parent or a shy parent, or so you can like kind of direct it how you want the parent to interact. It's a really good way to practice having a difficult phone conversation about anything. But the psychs really appreciated practicing that phone call.
Just one more thought about coaching. So again, we know the professional development literature is real clear that one training does not do it, that coaching is really integral. But what happens in some of the districts is that, the people who would provide coaching are already really busy. So just having an external person, I Zoom in. We schedule a time, I Zoom in, see all the team. If they do some work ahead of time, we kind of, they send things to me. We talk about it. What's nice about it is that it does make them accountable. They have to concentrate and do it. And then they're usually pretty supported by doing that. And sometimes we have a couple coaching sessions. But the other little secret that I don't tell them is if they're really having problems, I get back in touch with, Patty and now her new director, and say, we're having a problem right here. And I'm seeing this in more than one building, or the note-taking thing is, they're confused about this. So it's a way for me actually to look at patterns and be able to help the district move forward as well. So that's something that Patty's taken advantage of, and it's been really a lot of fun for me. For me, I'm a teacher, and I never, you do those 2-day things and you never know what happens. So I get to, find out if people are doing it, which is just really super satisfying for me.
And they feel like they know her personally.
Yes. I know. And they send me pictures of their grandkids and whatnot. So it's good. All right. So I appreciate your time. What other thoughts or questions do you have about implement the kind of activities that you would want to put in place to be able to implement?
Thank you. And I think, as we said yesterday, we direct a parent center, and we have 3 PTIs in a large southern state. But I want to thank you for your dedication to really making this work. I mean, it's really fantastic. And I'm sitting here as a parent thinking this, the attention and the effort that you've put in, from the school system, the administration's perspective it's really very gratifying. And, we talk about collaboration and building trust and so forth. I mean, it's, that's really tremendous. So I have a couple of questions. One, I'm just curious, have you shared the information about the decrease in attorney's fees with schools and other?
Okay, yes, I've shared that with our school board, obviously first, and our cabinet, and then with the principals and school sites, and then with the parents too. We shared that information so that they know, because like Carta said, those are resources or limited resources that could go to so many other things. So we just really want them to talk to us first.
That's great. And so I'm just curious, has that had any impact on implementation? Has anybody said, oh my gosh, we got to speed this up? Gotcha. Okay, one other question. And looking at the list of folks on the last slide who you reached out to and provided support and training to and so forth, that the next one, yeah, that one. It strikes me looking at that list that the leadership in the district, leadership in the school, several of these positions may change on a regular basis. But at least in our state, folks who are in the same positions for the long run are often classroom teachers. And I was just wondering, with special regard to the issue of turnover and losing that institutional knowledge, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but have you reached out and maybe tried to find cheerleaders or champions among the folks who are going to be in the building year after year, so that, principal moves on, the special ed director moves on, the superintendent is there for a couple of years, they move on, somebody else comes in, but you still got folks who are in the trenches who have seen the very tangible results that can be achieved from this. And I'm just wondering.
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good question. So the people who move on the most would be our case carriers. A lot of them only last a year, maybe 2. So that's where we really did isolate. The speech pathologists and the school psychs have been the people that have stayed the longest. So that's why special attention to them. That just seems to be the trend in our district. It's maybe not that way in every district, but those ones are the people I'm really hanging my hat on. That have been there the longest.
So follow up, because you're seeing a decrease. So have you noticed by using this facilitated IEP and all the training, has it helped with any sort of retention? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really hard to say. I am too soon. Yeah, because we just fully, like last spring, we finally trained everybody. So it's probably too soon to tell. But it's really made me pause about having a longer range training plan because of the turnover. I mean, not that I can't count on the teams. We trained 1 team from each school and they've been the core at that school. But when those people leave, I really need to train. It needs to be an ongoing training of people and new principals as well. So yeah, probably too early to tell to answer your question.
I mean, because that's what we hear, right? So much paperwork. Parents are so upset, all of those things. And then given your missing gift of time slide, right? I would just think this might go a long way towards folks, because people have said, I don't feel supported, or, and we know teachers, even though some teachers stay in the building, we also know teachers as a whole are just leaving the profession in droves. And so I just see this as another way of trying to support them, because they need the support.
Research, but I can speak a little to that. There we go. When we were administrators, Cassie and I, in our school district, we were having the droves leave quickly and in tears. And those were our case carriers, our special education teachers, et cetera. And so when we started this process, which for us, it was many years ago, but it was about a 3 to 5 year plan. Within 2 years, I had eliminated all of my teachers leaving. And of course that changes over time, and COVID was an outlier. But what we found, what teachers were coming to us and telling us was, I feel refreshed. I feel like I can do this. I don't feel afraid of the IEP meeting, and I feel like I can handle some criticism. And so at first, when we trained our districts, we trained firemen people, people to go in and solve the problem and lead the highest, hottest meetings. And then we decided we were going to do it differently, like a way of doing business in our district. And when we made that shift, we re-empowered the case carriers. And that's when I saw that change. So for us, it was a direct relationship.
Said earlier, it gave them competence and confidence to now face that IEP meeting. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you went about approaching the union and what sort of pitch you made to them, and if there were any challenges that you encountered.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Okay, so first of all, I have a really good relationship with all of our unions, but it wasn't just by accident. Like I have, as the special ed director, and even now as the assistant superintendent, I have standing meetings with each of the unions monthly. I think it was every other week when I was the SPED director. So we just had really open communication about things that they're hearing and concerns so that we could be proactive and solve things before it became a problem. So the biggest problem for the certificated union was really because the SLPs and the school psychologists, they represent those members. It was that change of having them do the report early, like give it to the parents over the phone early, because they felt like that was going to be more work. But it really wasn't more work. It was just asking them to rethink their timing. So a lot of them, and it caused a lot of other problems because sometimes they were not finishing that report until the night before the IEP meeting. So the parent had no idea, but also the case carrier had no idea. And they're trying to develop some draft goals. And so everybody's waiting for the psych report with bated breath. And so I think it just backed up everything. They just needed to see it work in see it through a few cycles for them to realize that it wasn't more work with the school psychologist or the SLP. It was that parent phone call, so that might have been a little bit more work. But the work put in ahead of time before the meeting was paying off in dividends. The other thing they were afraid about is that the IEP was going to actually last longer. So that was a huge concern that we had. We didn't actually time them, I don't think, but from the very get-go, from the very first preschool meetings that started, that they did them first. So from the very first meetings, it became quickly apparent that the meetings were actually a lot shorter and much more effective. So in the long run, it was a time saver. So that was a fear that they had that didn't come to fruition because the meetings weren't longer. They were
in my experience with unions, my experience with unions is a similar thing. If you don't know what this is, you think it's something else. You think it's more. And so the communication was people are still going to have to do their paperwork, but the goal is to share information differently and to operate at a meeting differently. And that was the message over and over again with our unions, is that we're not making people do anything more. In fact, we're trying to give them more support, trying to reduce the stress that they have. It's going to be good for them. I mean, that was our message with our unions.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line between, talking about shorter meetings versus more efficient meetings,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, definitely they do become shorter because they are more efficient, and focused, yeah. And there's, strategies put in place to make sure that we're focusing on the child and not each other and all of the things. But people often say, well, when you have more collaboration and you're, talking about all the things and we're not just reading the paperwork, how is that not going to take longer? And we just can say through data that it does shorten meetings, but that it isn't wasted time if they do run a little longer because they're more efficient and people are leaving feeling as though they have a shared understanding, feeling as though they feel valued and heard. And all of that is priceless when it comes to the amount of time, right? Because if they don't feel that way, you're going to be back at the table anyway, right?
And fewer Part B meetings where the meeting doesn't go well, and then you have to have another one, and nobody likes that. I mean, nobody.
Yeah, one of my recommendations that I was thinking about is, and I don't know how this could work with the district or the state, but inviting the union leadership to actually be trained. When I trained my entire staff during COVID, I was looking for professional development opportunities. I heard about FIEPs. I knew about what they were kind of. I wound up on the phone with Robin, and it was by far and has been the best training we've ever gone through. And every one of my new staff goes through CASE. So like that buy-in of getting to see it firsthand would be really good.
Yeah. Another thing that just happened in just a district in Illinois was that their legal counsel, the district's legal counsel was at the training.
So we'd love to invite our legal counsel. It'd be awesome.
It was great.
Yeah. So one of our most resistant case carrier teachers is also the special ed director, is what she's called, for the union. And so she just went through one of the last groups, and then she's like, why didn't you make me do this sooner? Yeah. So that was her thing to me, like, oh my gosh, if I would have just listened to you, because I wanted her to go through one of the first groups.
I think we have time for like one more question, if there are any questions. You've been a small but mighty group. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.